The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. That's right, before the present day in cinema, before every franchise wanted to follow the Marvel formula, every movie that was based off of a series of novels wanted to be Harry Potter. So the studio was kind of thinking, hey, Harry Potter did this, it was financially successful, Deathly Hallows Parts 1 and 2, so let's just split our last book in half. And we'll talk about why this kind of financially backfired for the studio, but this was once again directed by the very capable Francis Lawrence, returning after a great entry in Catching Fire. Of course, it once again stars your usual suspects, Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Woody Harrelson. You also have some new actors coming into the fray like Julianne Moore. So spoiler alert from Catching Fire, Katniss Everdeen is rescued from the devastating Quarter Quell, and she awakes in the complex beneath the supposedly destroyed District 13. As her friend Gail Hawthorne, played once again by Liam Hemsworth, reveals in the previous movie, their home District 12 has been reduced to rubble after the Capitol bombs them. And Josh Hutcherson's Peeta is now the brainwashed captive of President Snow, played once again by Donald Sutherland, while at the same time, Katniss also learns about a secret rebellion spreading throughout all of Panem under the guise of President Coin, played by Julianne Moore. And this is a rebellion that will place her at the center of a plot to turn the tables on Snow. Katniss becomes the symbol of the rebellion, the Mockingjay, if you will, hence the name. Now let me start from the get-go. Mockingjay absolutely did not need to be split into two. I think you could have very easily pulled off a big 3-hour extravaganza, and honestly, you could have made it a better paced movie that way. I appreciate the respect that they want to pay to the original book by showcasing as many little details as you possibly can, but I feel like if you wanted to do that, that's more catered for television nowadays. Movies, yeah, this was the norm. If you had a big book that sold really well on the shelves, and you had this big epic finale with this big war going on for peace, then yeah, turn it into 2 movies, because yeah, that's the big financial idea. Looking back on it now almost a decade later, the fact that this is 2 movies works against Mockingjay in a lot of cases. And this is not on the fault of the directing or the acting, because Francis Lawrence is once again proving more than a capable hand. This is a beautiful looking film. And I love everything that Jennifer Lawrence is doing in this movie as Katniss. She's a great hero. And it's kind of weird that I'm thinking this, but she's very much like Rocky Balboa in the sense. Not like she's an underdog, but when she's given all these scripts for the propos, if you will, these propaganda pieces that they're shooting against the Capitol to try and get support for the rebellion, Katniss's line delivery just is not there. You can tell that Katniss Everdeen is not a people person, very much an introvert. But when she's walking through the rubble of District 12, when she's looking at the fires that are sparking in District 8, and the impassioned speeches that she's giving to the camera, that is when Jennifer Lawrence comes off the strongest to me. And believe it or not, I think Josh Hutcherson's most interesting performance throughout this whole saga is in Part 1. And you can definitely tell that Hutcherson was so stoked to take on this aspect of Peeta Mellark. The brainwashing aspect, and the fact that this guy is a deranged maniac, where he almost chokes out Katniss at the very end of Part 1. Yeah, he's holed up in bed and he's strapped down like the Exorcist. Hutcherson never got to explore that part of the character before in his whole career. So I'm sure he was super stoked to actually get to play this sort of role, and he pulls it off really well, I think. Again, there's not one bad performance in this movie. President Snow, once again played by Donald Sutherland, is very conniving and very ice cold. And all these new actors that come in, Natalie Dormer from Game of Thrones fame plays the director of these propos, and she does really well. I love the makeup on her character. I always forget that they got Mahershala Ali to play Boggs in this, and he is so damn good in this. Also gotta say, rest in peace, Philip Seymour Hoffman. He tragically passed away while filming both parts of Mockingjay here. He was really great in what would sadly turn out to be a posthumous performance for him. But I think the most compelling new character that they introduce in this movie is President Coin, played by Oscar-nominated actress Julianne Moore. Seriously, the Hunger Games got some big names for these movies, and she is really great. You can definitely tell that she has some revenge on the mind, and she definitely comes off like a phoenix type of leader rising up out of the ashes. And I definitely feel like she plays that part of the politician well, where you kind of want to gravitate towards her and vote for her, if you will. But she definitely is not a perfect politician. She has her flaws. And that's something that I cannot help but respect Suzanne Collins for, because she is definitely looking at both sides of the political argument in this case. For Snow and for Coin, both of whom definitely have their flaws, but also both have their strengths. And you can see why the characters in this movie want to root for both sides. Now, that's not necessarily saying that I myself would side with someone like President Snow, who is just a bastard. Like, oh my god, why would anybody want to side with him? But I feel like that's what's so great about the Hunger Games in general, is that it's such a great reflection, and it's a great cautionary tale on what our society could look like if we don't change our way of living. And I respect this series a lot. I think it's one of my favorite dystopian series out there. And even though I think these last two Mockingjay movies are the weakest of this saga, I feel like both of them definitely have their own strengths. And I feel like it's really going to come down to the viewer on which Mockingjay entry they prefer. Because Part 1 is a very grim feature film. Very dark color palettes all throughout the cinematography. It's a very faded looking movie. Very dirty, almost as if it was shot underground. It feels very raw. But it definitely has its weakness of being a very slow-paced movie. And that's not on the filmmaking at all. That's not even on the script writing at all. It's just the fact that the studio decided to split up this finale into two movies. Because the political arguments that are discussed in this movie are very interesting. The cliffhanger that we get at the very end with PETA up and down thrashing on his hospital bed, that's interesting. But I feel like Part 1 being in this movie's subtitle is its biggest weakness. Because first of all, pretend you're a casual viewer just going into the movie. You have no idea what the Hunger Games is. If you walked in 2014 and saw that this movie had Part 1 in the subtitle, like, you would know you're not going to get a conclusive ending. And number two, it works against this movie being the first part of a finale, mainly because I feel like if you just made Mockingjay one big 3-hour extravaganza, you wouldn't have so much of the slow pacing in this small 2-hour runtime. Because I gotta tell you, the pacing of these Mockingjay movies, I feel like, are definitely its downfall. If you want to talk about just general filmmaking terms, the pacing of the Mockingjay movies are the biggest kryptonite for them. But besides the pacing issues, again, there's some interesting concepts being delved into. Phenomenal performances across the board, with special shout out to Josh Hutcherson. Because, oh my god, with him stepping out of his comfort zone and exploring his range as an actor, that work paid off for him. And again, gotta shout out James Newton Howard for Best Original Score. How did The Hanging Tree not get nominated for Best Original Song? Because it definitely feels like it was written in a somber environment, but the way Jennifer Lawrence sings it and the lyrics that are in there, you definitely feel those glimmers of hope shining through. But yeah, I still really enjoyed Part 1 for what it was, and thankfully we have Part 2 out so I could pop it in right then and there. But as it sits, I'm going to give The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 a B. Still a very solid movie as it sits. But next time on the Hunger Games playlist, we're going to get into what I think is a superior entry, the ultimate finale for this franchise, Mockingjay Part 2. I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Y'all are the best. Thank you so much again for tuning in. And do consider subscribing. It's a great community of film lovers and entertainment lovers over here, and y'all are invited to the party. Loads more that we can discuss and then some over here. Thank you again for clicking on this video. Y'all are the best. And with all that being said, back talk commence.